He turned a sport once labeled human cockfighting into a $12 billion global juggernaut. He survived political assassination attempts by the U.S. Senate, blacklisting by every major TV network, and a terrifying brush with the Boston mob that forced him to flee his life with nothing but a suitcase. Today, he's worth an estimated $600 million and sits at the helm of the most aggressive sports empire on the planet. But the world was never supposed to know his name. Dana White was the ultimate underdog, a two-time college dropout who was expelled from high school and spent his early years as a bellhop and a box aerobics instructor. He was the guy nobody expected to amount to anything. Yet, while the experts were calling the UFC a dying, illegal relic, Dana saw a gold mine in the grip. Through a never-say-die attitude and a brutal refusal to accept the word no, he took a bankrupt organization and transformed it into a powerhouse franchise. He's one of America's greatest success stories, a man with zero filter and even less patience for the sterilized world of political correctness. He doesn't play the corporate game, he breaks it. The question isn't how he survived the chaos, it's how he used that chaos to build a billion-dollar throne. What is the brutal success philosophy that turns a high school dropout into a global kingmaker?
So now the cable companies wouldn't put them on pay-per-view. The ATM machine was cut off.
But it wasn't the beginning. It was human cockfighting. It was.
Three words that describe Whitey Bulger.
Stone cold killer.
To understand the savage business mind of the man who built the UFC, you have to understand the environment that forged him. Dana White didn't come from a boardroom. He came from the school of hard knocks. His early life was a lesson in instability. After his father, an alcoholic who was rarely more than a shadow, disappeared from the picture, Dana was raised by his mother, June White. She was a fierce Irish-American nurse who held the family together, but Dana was a firebrand that couldn't be extinguished. He was a two-time college dropout who flopped out in his first semester both times. He spent his days laying asphalt under the brutal sun and his nights as a bouncer at a rough Irish bar. Even then, the signs were clear. Dana couldn't be controlled by societal norms. He was forced to become fiercely independent, a survivalist who leaned into his aggressive nature by becoming a boxer-sized coach. But in early 1990s Boston, if you were making money on the streets, someone was always watching. Enter the Winter Hill Gang, the notorious Irish mob led by the legendary Whitey Bulger. While running his fitness business, Dana found himself in the crosshairs of the mob's enforcers. He ended up owing them $2,500, although we don't know what for. He tried to duck them, but the game ended with a single phone call. The voice on the other end was cold. You have until 1 o'clock tomorrow to pay up. Dana didn't have the money, and he knew that in Southie, an unpaid debt to the mob usually ended in a casket. He didn't panic, he moved. He hung up the phone, called Delta, and booked a one-way ticket to Las Vegas. He left his furniture, his car, and his entire life behind in the dust. He landed in the desert with nothing but a suitcase and a chip on his shoulder the size of Massachusetts. But little did the mob know. By chasing him out of Boston, they hadn't destroyed him. They had just unleashed him on the world of business. Dana didn't just hide in Vegas. He reinvented himself. He went back to what he knew, boxer-size, but added a new weapon to his arsenal, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. While training, White met and began managing Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell, two of the only bright spots in a sport that was rapidly going down the drain. Through them, he got an inside look at the UFC's parent company, SEG, and realized they were broke. The brand was toxic. Senator John McCain was leading a crusade to ban it, calling it human cockfighting. It was unregulated, banned from major TV networks, and bleeding money. But where the world saw a barbaric mess, Dana saw the future of sports. He called his old high school friend Lorenzo Fertitta, a billionaire casino heir and former member of the Nevada State Athletic Commission. Dana's pitch was simple: buy it. In 2001, they pulled the trigger for $2 million. For that price, they didn't get an arena or a staff. They got an old wooden octagon, about a dozen fighter contracts, and 3 valuable letters: UFC. Dana was installed as president, and the work began. But the take no BS's approach didn't yield results overnight. For the next few years, the UFC was a sinking ship, losing nearly $34 million. They were ignored by mainstream media and laughed at by the sporting world. Dana White was at a crossroads. He had the brand, but he didn't have the audience. He was about to learn that in Vegas, you either go big or you go home. And Dana White was never going back to Boston. The newly acquired UFC wasn't just a challenge, it was a disaster. Most men would have walked away. Everything was stacked against Dana. They didn't even own UFC.com. It belonged to a company called User Friendly Computers. The sport was banned on TV, outlawed in most states, and blacklisted internationally. But Dana White doesn't do retreat. He handpicked a team to write a strict set of fighter regulations, the unified rules of MMA. He didn't send lawyers to pitch them. He did the legwork himself. He turned up at the offices of state-level decision makers, working them with a relentless, savage charm. He was selling a vision of a regulated, professional sport to people who still saw it as a crime scene. Despite the hustle, the company was hemorrhaging cash. It was burning through nearly $44 million. Things got so tight they couldn't even pay their commentator, Joe Rogan. A lifelong fan of the sport, Rogan agreed to work for free just to keep the lights on. The pressure finally reached a breaking point. Lorenzo Fertitta called Dana, his voice heavy with the reality of the math. They were losing too much, too fast. He told Dana he wanted to pull the plug, to sell the UFC for whatever they could get and walk away from the wreckage. But the next morning, Fertitta called back. He had the same take no BS fire that Dana had. He simply said, screw it, let's keep going. That one phone call changed sports history, but they were still broke and they needed a miracle. They decided to bet their last remaining chips on a wild idea that would either save the company or bury them forever. Dana White saw what the suits missed. Fighting is the only universal language. Soccer and cricket are regional, but everyone understands a punch to the face with a laser-focused vision. Dana just needed a way to sneak past the gatekeepers. Enter The Ultimate Fighter. This reality show was Lorenzo Fertitta's final all-in gamble. If it failed, the UFC was dead. But the strategy was a brilliant Trojan horse. Networks were terrified of the barbaric UFC brand, but they loved reality TV. When Spike TV refused to pay for the show, Dana didn't walk away. He doubled down. In a move of savage brilliance, he gave the show to Spike for free, footing the $10 million production bill himself just to get airtime. It was the ultimate never say it can't be done move. The ratings exploded. The fighters were no longer seen as thugs, but as human beings with stories. The Trojan horse had breached the mainstream, turning a failing experiment into a global phenomenon. After The Ultimate Fighter, the floodgates opened. Dana didn't just sit back, he built a massive ecosystem of video games and spin-off shows, turning his Vegas gym dream into a global reality. But Dana didn't want to play the game, he wanted to own it. In a series of predatory power moves, he bought out his biggest rival, Pride, and absorbed their roster. To finish off the rest, he broadcast free fights on the same nights competitors ran expensive pay-per-views, bleeding them dry until the UFC was the only dog left in the fight. What makes White a force of nature is his no-nonsense soul. He makes bold decisions and refuses to bend. He controls a narrative with a verbal savagery unheard of in the corporate world. If a reporter asks a stupid question or a crew misses a beat, he lets them have it on the spot. He doesn't care about optics. He cares about loyalty and results. From staying loyal to Donald Trump for early support to publicly flaming his own champions like Francis Ngannou for crossing him, Dana doesn't negotiate with the status quo. He dictates to it. In a world of scripted suits, he's the authentic glitch in the system that actually works. What can we learn from Dana White? He's an anomaly, a dropout who received zero handouts and learned the rules of survival on the street. He didn't just build a company, he forged a mindset that refuses to accept defeat. Dana is living proof that your start doesn't dictate your finish. He transformed a dying sport into a global powerhouse through pure grit. The lesson for any entrepreneur is simple. Stop asking for permission, ignore the critics, and never say it can't be done. He's the architect of a new kind of success, being unapologetically yourself. If this inspired you, hit like and subscribe to CEO Philosophy. See you in the next episode.